This is generally the time of the year, Kane Corns, where we tip over into real full-blown preparation mode for a new AFL season out the back of the Australian Open. And I tell you what, Mitch Cleary's report on Channel 7 last night really did set some tongues wagging. Geelong have set their sights on the next trade target, holding a secret meeting with Gold Coast's former number one pick, Matt Rowell. And Mitch has reported that Rowell, his manager, Tom Petroro, sat down face-to-face with Geelong coach Chris Scott and the football boss at the Cats, Andrew Mackey, at a private apartment in Melbourne's Bayside suburbs late last year. So we know these talks happen. We know clubs are proactive in the space. I dare say Geelong wouldn't have been the only club to meet with Matt Rowell if he's doing his due diligence ahead of coming out of contract. But it's another one for the Cats. They set their eyes on and their target on Bailey Smith, a couple of years out from making that deal happen. And the Selly's a good one. It's a strong one. Come and become the next Joel Selwood.
Yeah, I personally thought Jai Clark was going to be the next Joel Selwood. So it says to me that they've probably whiffed on that top 10 pick. He's had some injury concerns and probably 12 months early to judge on that. But what I've seen from Jai Clark probably hasn't impressed me like the way I thought he would. He's tough, but I'm not sure he gets enough of the ball and I'm not sure he uses it well enough. So maybe they've moved on from that talk because that was all the talk before they drafted him, that he's going to be our next Joel Selwood. But it's very much in the strategic model of Geelong. And the thing that I've liked about what they've done is the players that they have brought in recently are all high draft picks and they're all of an age that says that they've got 10 years to play. So when you look at Bruin, when you look at Ollie Henry, when you look at Bailey Smith, they've all got a lot of footy ahead of them. So to be able to bring in high quality top draft picks who have had the hard work done for them, like they've been developed for 4 or 5 years at another club, Geelong get them and they're ready to go. It's a great model. Now, how do they get it done? If they do get this done, it's a big if, isn't it? There's lots to play out over the next 12 months, of course, but it makes a lot of sense with the pitch for him. How do they get it done? He's not a free agent, so you need to trade for him. It's easier if he's out of contract, but what's he worth? Well, what's he worth, Sammy? Well, it starts at one top 10 pick, you would think, with some change, I would think, for Matt Rowell. I think that's...
It's been an interesting journey, hasn't it? From the time he came in and he set the world alight in his first 3 games and the serious injury, and then he seemed to lose his way for a period of time. I mean, the manner in which he played, and you've been pretty outspoken about the way he should be playing the game. So he's 85 games into his career right now. He's 23 years of age. I mean, this is the moment. And, I mean, Gold Coast, really, this is their time. This is when they're about to... I think... What we don't appreciate, Dan, is some of those guys up there have formed a really close bond. I mean, I know he came with Noah Anderson, his best mate from his school-age years, but with Ben King, all the other players in and around that setup, they're close off the field. Most of them have come from outside the state. And if they are about to take flight and the Suns have a great year, I mean, I'd be almost surprised if he would have... You stick it out for this long and your team's about to come good, it'd be hard to wrench him out.
It would be hard. It's always hard, isn't it? And, I mean, that'll be dependent on the success that Gold Coast have. You're right. They're ready to go now. If that success doesn't come, then he's more likely to leave, you would think. And how do we value Matt Rowell, all right? Like, so I don't personally value and rate Matt Rowell as highly as others. That's not to say I don't love the way that he plays. It's not to say I wouldn't love him in my team, and I don't admire the toughness, tenacity and consistency that he plays with. But do I have him on the upper echelon of damaging midfielders that are in this game? No, I don't. Luke Davies-Uniacke, Horne-Francis, Sheasel, Dacos. Yep. I don't have him as highly as that. Will Ashcroft, no. Lachie Neale, no. I mean, Lachie Neale is probably the right player for Matt Rowell to base his game off. I think very similar in size and stature and the way that they play. Neale's been able to add damaging elements to his game, but he's 23. What was Lachie Neale at 23? Probably wasn't as developed as what Matt Rowell is, but is he ever going to be a dangerous scoreboard impact midfielder who has other strings to his bow other than getting 8 clearances and 10 tackles a game? I'm not sure. So what's he worth? What do you give up for a player like that? I'm not sure. But then on the other side, you go, well, he had 25 Brownlow votes last year. And you go, okay, well, what does a Brownlow mean? So he's probably going to be a Brownlow medalist, but Matt Priddis and Ollie Wines and players like this are Brownlow medalists as well. So I personally don't think he's as damaging as Noah Anderson or Hugh McCluggage or Zach Merritt, players like that. So, but Geelong,
he feels a different brief when you look at Geelong when it makes complete sense, because Dangerfield, Duncan, Blitzarves, Guthrie, they're going to be gone in the next few years, and there's some real outside speed. Smith, Holmes, so you pair him with those sort of guys. And I know you got Tanner Bruin, Bowes, Jai Clark and the like. So it makes complete sense from Geelong's point of view. But I think really where it sits at the moment is the decision clearly needs to be made by Matt Rowell. Am I staying or am I going? Now, if I'm staying, well, then it's for them and him and the Suns to work out. If he's going, well, then the competition's going to be fierce. I don't think you make up your mind to go to Geelong. You do your due diligence now to see what's on the table.
If it's a money decision, it's not going to be Geelong, is it? He's not going to Geelong for the biggest check that he can possibly cash. If he's going to do that, that'll be, who would that be? St Kilda? It'd be Essendon.
Essendon, surely.
Saints. Be one of those clubs.
And I know Essendon have their 3-year plan that we've spoken about, but they're armed with a heap of pick cachet to throw the Suns' way to satisfy them if it got to that. And then there's Collingwood. How many times have we spoken about how aging Collingwood's list is? So when they'd have to be at the tail. Now, I don't have the picks to give up at this stage. They're not going to get him, are they? They're not going to. They don't have a pick at the moment, but the year's a long time. And clearly they'd have to be at the table and have an interest in
it. Doesn't it say, like, these, you and I have discussed this, I think, last week, that these decisions are just made so far out, like, and the seeds are planted so far out, and Geelong are as good as anyone. I think Hawthorn is starting to plant those seeds 12, 18 months out from these players being available. I don't know what it says about Matt Rowell. He's clearly not that happy. Like, he's clearly not seeing his future. Otherwise, there's no way you're meeting with a club in your off-season in October, 12 months out from being out of contract. If you're happy, you're happy, right? You're sitting down and you're talking to the club about an extension, aren't you? If you're happy.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think year 23 coming to 24, it's probably be the biggest contract of your career. So wouldn't you want to be aware of the full facts? Surely any manager worth their salt would be saying, let's get all the information, right? You're not unhappy at Gold Coast, but there's nothing wrong with being armed with everything. And look, maybe it means that Gold Coast pay more. Maybe it means that your contract terms to stay are better. I think you'd be pretty silly in the modern day with all the movement to shut yourself off from what the rest of it looks like.
I think you can test the market without meeting in a secret hotel room with Chris Scott.
But that's all part of it, isn't it?
I think your manager can pick up the phone and go, hey, what do you reckon Matt Rowell's worth? And ring a few ring a few clubs. I don't think you need to actually sit down and hear a pitch.
But that's not being aware of all the facts, is it? Like, let's say it gets to June, July, and you're still out of contract, and you're thinking, oh, maybe I will go. Well, geez, I haven't even met with Chris Scott, have I? I mean, who's to know? What's my role going to be if I do go there? What's it going to look like? You've got to be aware of everything, don't you? It's like considering whether you're going to leave your place of employment. I mean, you want to go and meet your new boss. You don't make a decision without doing that. So I think he's gathering all the facts at the moment. I wouldn't be panicking if I'm a Suns supporter. I mean, if it does get to mid-year and he hasn't re-signed, and clearly the Suns would have loved to have signed him by now, don't get me wrong, it's not ideal. But I think at this stage of your football evolution, this will be his biggest contract. I think you've got to be aware of all the facts.
All right, it's going to be a good watch. We'll see, because he's the type of player that seems to need everything going for him as well, like just dotting the I's and crossing the T's and all of that. So the added scrutiny of this, we'll see if that impacts his performance as well, because no doubt up there in the Gold Coast, it's pretty easy to be off Broadway, but now all eyeballs are going to be on him and whether or not he signs that contract.
Look at all these texts coming through. How many of them, you reckon, mention the words Cotton On? There's at least 8 out of every 10 texts. He'll be the CEO of Cotton On by the end of the year. They're coming thick and fast. If Rowell comes back to Victoria, it's only to come home, and that's Carlton, says JB in St Kilda. Rowell, a certainty of the Cats, says Mozza. They love the Rangers at the Cattery. So all these texts coming through on the future of Matty Rowell. Open line 1300 736 736. The 40 Winks temper text 0433 98 11 16. Just on that, Ash's text in. Hopefully the Rowell decision goes the other way, and Rowell gives Gold Coast the vote of confidence with a double down, 4 to 5 year deal. And they enter the top 8 for the first time and start making a genuine tilt at the ultimate success. I must admit, as a complete and utter neutral, I would love to see that too. I'd just love to see the Suns realise some sort of potential this year. And he re-signs, as they have all done in more recent times, haven't they, just about? They've got a pretty strong bond up there and a strong pact. So.
Yeah, they do. And a big checkbook as well. Like, they've all been paid more than what they're worth, I think. And Gold Coast have finally said, well, you know what, Jack Lukosius, we're probably not paying you $1 million anymore because your performances haven't warranted. Jack Bowes is saying they've finally got their salary cap in order so that they can prioritise players that they want to keep, like Anderson and Rowell.
Nothing lighthearted about the latest injury setback, albeit hopefully it's a relatively minor one, but it's meant that Tim English will sit out of contact training or full training for an indefinite period. There's no timeline on this. He suffered an abdominal injury in training out at the Whitten Oval. It happened after he copped a knock on Friday. The 2023 All-Australian will resume training today, but will be on a modified program until symptoms improve. And this is the second year running that the Big Ruckman has had an interrupted pre-season, of course, with all the migraine-related symptoms in January of last year, 12 months ago. He still had a good year last year, I thought. Solid, without being spectacular, but this is a setback he could have done without.
Solid's probably fair. Maybe just a little bit under solid. He's actually played more games than I thought. He's played 46 games in the last 2 years, so hasn't missed much footy, but it does feel like there are issues that come up most weeks. Like he saw... Yeah, the Bulldogs are another fascinating one, aren't they? Like, depending on where you see them, what's the range of where they can finish? Yeah. Well, they can finish anywhere from top 4 to bottom 4. So I reckon the range of the Dogs for me is the biggest of any team. Like, if you look, what's the best case scenario? Well, they probably play off in a grand final. What's the worst case? Well, they could finish bottom 6.
Yeah, I know. That's so true. Like during the break, we were talking about it, and it's the most competitive AFL era maybe we've ever seen. That sort of statement could be made of all but a couple of clubs, I reckon. That their bottom end, it only takes, it's circumstantial, isn't it? Like if all manner of things go wrong, and let's hope this doesn't happen, but if the Bond gets injured and Tim English has a rough year and Libba maybe is past his prime and a few other things go wrong, then it can unravel. Like we saw with Melbourne last year finishing 14th, it can unravel quickly.
Well, that you'd be worried a little bit because you already go, well, Jamara's probably not going to play for the first month. So best case. So that's, I'm hearing interesting things about Norton, like how much or how little he has done throughout the pre-season. So if you go, we'll interrupt the pre-season for Norton. And
Treloar's had some issues
the
as
way
well,
that he plays, and Treloar's got soft tissue. There's warning signs with his soft tissue every year, and he's getting past 30 now as well. So that's not going to get better. You lose some depth with McRae and Daniel, and then you go, well, Tim English, what does that mean? Does that mean lob rucks? So then what does that do to our back 6 and our key position defenders? So it hasn't been a smooth summer by the looks. I'm interested to speak to Kingy about that on Friday because he's had a look at their training and get his thoughts on the Dogs as well as all the other clubs he's been to. Fireball back on Friday, of course, so we'll discuss them at length. But they're just an interesting test case, and Tim English is just not going to be the player that he was probably looking like he was going to be 2 or 3 seasons ago, where he's going to be, a top 2 or 3, or if not the best ruckman in the competition for the next 5 years. That's just not going to happen now for Tim with the way that he plays.
Yep, they're bound for Noosa. They're bound for that pre-season training camp in the next day. They might even be leaving today. So Tim English ruled out of their Sunday match simulation session already. So all eyes will be on whether Jamar actually makes a trip up there as well, given he's not really training with the main team at the moment and battling some well-being and some personal issues there. So his pre-season has been far from ideal. Elliot Yeo, unlike Tim English, he hasn't played a lot of football of late, and he's going to miss almost certainly now the start of the season. He's got a syndesmosis issue. He's got a medial ligament issue. He's on the wrong end of a nasty tackle. And the teams are revving the engine at the moment. They're going pretty hard. So this could happen at any time. It's just happened yet again to Elliot Yeo, who just have to be one of the more injury-prone players we've seen in recent times, unfortunately.
So it's got to be said, I just loved his season last year. I thought he was a real bright spot for them in what was just a disastrous 3-year period, mind you. But the way that he played was like, gee, I'm watching West Coast today for Harley Reid and Elliot Yeo, and that's it. There's no other reason to watch them. But he was one of the reasons to watch. But then West Coast get tipped in because he has, 2/3 of a good season last year before he got injured late, and reward him with a 3-year contract for a 31-year-old, turned 31 in October. This is games played since 2020 for Elliot Yeo. 10, 12, 5, 10, 20. And West Coast go, you know what? Because there's a story that's probably been leaked by the Yeo camp that there's interest from a Victorian club. We're going to give him 3 years at 31. honestly, it honestly blows my mind, the stupidity of clubs. And he was a player that needed to be on the edge as well. He's not dissimilar to Jake Stringer. I don't think his standards have been that good for a fair amount of time. Finally got himself right because he was playing for a contract and
playing some good footy.
And you get awesome footy, no doubt about it. But you're not going to deny time, are you? You're not going to. You're like, great if he's 22. Yeah, no worries. Have whatever you want. But he doesn't play. And he's 31. Like, his body's not going to get better. Now, this is an unfortunate injury. Probably unavoidable, really, with the way that he plays. Not soft tissue, so contact injury. Get all of that. But it's like Fremantle signing Nat Fyfe for a 2-year contract extension when they just unnecessary things that clubs.
So could he be prepared to let him go then? When clearly he's so important for Harley Reid, Ruben Jimby, these next generation. He's
important if he plays, but if he doesn't,
well, he was. Yeah,
but he was. Well, for the first time in 5 years, he played.
At the time when he was considering leaving, it depends who you believe.
For a 31-year-old who doesn't play.
Because that's what the rival offer was. So then you're trying to work out, would he actually leave us? Would he actually go? And they were convinced enough, clearly, West Coast, that he was going to take up the offer to move east. So will they paint it into a corner? I mean, they've got to pay the money to someone. You've got to pay a portion of the cap. Who else are they paying there? I mean, you know what I mean?
Oh, I don't care what they pay him. It's more the contract length. Like, pay him 900, whatever. I don't care what you pay him. But 3 years for a 31-year-old, like, with his issues, and now it's another talking point. So anyway, it hasn't been a great first up summer for McWalter, has it? Like, Andrew McWalter, like, coming in with Liam Ryan, Ruben Jinby, now Elliot Yeo getting injured. Welcome to senior coaching.
Yeah, indeed. And Dougal Howard, of course, this happened yesterday, the shoulder dislocation. So we wait to learn how serious that is for Dougal Howard. That happened at training. He was due to undergo scans on that. And some concerns around Mattaes Filippo, which you mentioned earlier on in the program as well, Kane.
Yeah, I was unaware. I was just reading that off the Sports Update. I think Tom Morris may have mentioned that because what I had been reading on Mattaes was that he was spending more time through the midfield this summer and was looking really good. So that one was a little bit out of the blue. But yeah, the Saints are an interesting one when you look at the way that their back line will be set up. If there's no Dougal Howard, there's no Josh Battle, I don't know what you're doing in terms of your key position players. Does Caminiti go back? Wilkie's an absolute star and a gun, but he's not necessarily young anymore, well into his 30s. Callum Wilkie, for as good as he has been, and then they've got the run off the back, which is dangerous, and that is when they're absolutely at their best, when Sinclair and Wanganeen Miller and these types of players, Henry, are dominating with their run and carry, but their key position backs are an issue. So yeah, I think the Saints are going to be in for a really rough year.
Essendon not making the finals, or at least not winning one.
I don't think they're going to be in most people's top eights, are they, the Bombers? But that doesn't mean that it can't happen. I think they'll finish higher than St Kilda.
Yeah, but so that's struck me, that bottom four. So they'll be lower than North. They'll be with North. They'll be with West Coast.
Well, I think
Richmond. There's three nailed on.
Richmond and West Coast will be
bottom two
locked in. I don't think North are going to finish bottom four. No. Mm-hmm. So then it's like you go through it. Go through the 18.
So last year was West Coast, North Melbourne, 18-17. Oh, hang on. Adelaide, yep.
And North. So Adelaide aren't finishing bottom four. If they do, they'll have a new coach inside a month. I don't think North Melbourne are going to, because they'll win 8. 8 will be enough to get you outside of the bottom. So go through the teams.
And Melbourne were 14th last year as well.
Someone has to finish bottom 4. So my tip would be that it'll be the Saints. Question without notice. Melbourne star Kozzie Pickett has liked a series of social media posts linking him to Fremantle, as he does little to calm reports he is all but certain to end up in purple after the 2025 season. What is Kozzie Pickett doing, liking a series of social media posts linking him to Fremantle, Sam Edmund?
Yeah, well, this takes me somewhat back to Harley Reid in the months before he was drafted. Now, that counted for little in the end. He went to West Coast. I don't know. He appears happy. I know he had to go. He's taken with the number 1 pick. But with everything said around him, he liked a couple of posts that were really critical of the Eagles. In fact, one saying that Adam Simpson could be sacked, and another one where you said the Eagles are embarrassment in the way they were running the bench. He liked both of those, counted for nothing. And then you've got Jason Horne-Francis in his first year at North Melbourne. You remember the hypothetical trade post he liked to Port Adelaide? Turned out to be plenty in that. So I don't know. Like, what's a social media like worth in 2025? Is it worth anything? It's odd, and you'd far prefer it didn't happen
right word.
If you were Melbourne. But we've spoken about this so many times. I mean, he's got some close friends at the Dockers. Shea Bolton is one of them, and they've had some catch-ups where Shea, lightheartedly or otherwise, has said, come and play at the Dockers with me. He said he's been homesick before, and it's amounted to nothing when it comes to the crunch. He mentioned it to Simon Goodwin in the exit meeting as recently as last year. So does he bang his fist on the table, which he'll have to do if he wants out, because he's contracted and Melbourne would not be in the business of trading him at all. So he'd have to force it somewhat. I'm not sure if he's got that in his personality, Kozzie Pickett.
This may be his way of trying to force it. I'm going to stay out west because Craig O'Donoghue has written a big feature piece, a big full pager. Darcy did not get fat and happy after becoming rich. Time to stop bashing the big ruckman. He goes on to say, Sean Darcy is pulling out all the stops to become a better player. Fremantle ruckman Sean Darcy has shed a truckload of weight and is giving up his own time to fly to Qatar to improve his rehab from knee surgery. So why is there so much negativity around him? The question without notice, is there negativity around Sean Darcy and is he getting bashed, or has Craig completely missed the mark of where the criticism goes, and that is to the Fremantle Footy Club for signing the deal and backing him in? Good luck to Sean Darcy. Like, hats off. What your manager and yourself absolutely stitched the club up. I haven't heard anyone criticise Sean Darcy. Have you?
Hey, you've just answered your own question. I feel like that article was written for you too, by the way,
But
was it not?
Completely missed the mark.
Well, you've been critical somewhat, less so, I know, of Sean and the way he's presented, have you not?
Yeah, I just
in the past.
But that's just the reality of the size and the frame of him, and you know it's always going to be a risk when you've got a big man like that plays a demanding position, and you lock him in for 7 years. And my criticism has more been around. He's not a forward; he's a ruckman. So don't try and put a square peg into a round hole. Like, Jackson and Darcy are both a ruckman. That's where my criticism lies. But well done to him. Like, you've completely stitched the club up. Well done to his management. But I think Craig's jumping at shadows, old Craig over there in the West.